to the Pop Culture Show. We're back. I know you missed us. So many people told me that you missed us. Look, jazz hands. And we're so thankful to be back. We're so thankful we have listeners. We're so thankful we have supporters. We're totally in our witchy vibe. It is October when we're shooting this. Who knows when it is when you're watching it, but I'm all spooky. My co-host, Jason Winslade, Dr. Jason Winslade, is all spooky, and we're ready to talk all the witchy stuff for you today.
But we decided that we were going to do the phenomenon that's been happening right now. And it's one of the first times we're going to do something that's not actually finished yet, but we decided the timing was so right. We had to do it for Halloween. And that is Agatha All Along. And it has indeed been Agatha all along in our hearts. But yeah, so that's our focus for today is the show Agatha All Along on Disney Plus. Finally got you onto initiated you into the Disney cult. Yeah, it's a show, and it's sort of a spin-off of the WandaVision show from a couple years ago, that had to do with Wanda Maximoff, the Scarlet Witch of the MCU. And it's so much fun. And it pretty much, we had to do it because it pretty much embodies everything that we talk about in terms of pop culture. And the show in a lot of ways is so meta about pop culture that we couldn't not talk about it. And even though it's not, we're not giving away there may be a few spoilers. Really, at this point, there's still 4 episodes left, I think, or three or 4 episodes left. So we're not really going to focus a lot on that long-term plot stuff, but we want to talk about all the different, meta aspects and all the pop culture stuff because it's just so immersed in it. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, it is. I mean, and one of the things I asked you and I asked my, friends who are familiar with the verse, do you need to watch WandaVision? Do you need to watch, Doctor Strange and all of those kinds of things in order to understand Agatha All Along? And now that I've gone back and done it all, I don't think you do, but I think it does help. So you kind of get a little bit of the backstory as to what's going on. I mean, you're the comic book person. I'm not a comic book person, but I, whatever I know about Thanos and those kinds of things. So...
Well, what's funny is that apparently my daughter told me she was spoiled about certain plot points about who characters were because of Funko dolls.
Oh, okay.
They put out Funko dolls with the characters' real identities as the names, and it spoiled it. And we already know one of them, the identity of the teen, which to me was pretty obvious from the beginning.
Sure.
But I guess there's another reveal. And we're not going to say it or speculate it now, but apparently there's another reveal about another character. So we'll see how that goes. I guess we'll know by next week. It'll be known by the time this episode is aired. So yeah, it's kind of funny that it's so immersed in not just pop culture but consumer culture that it's a toy is what actually spoiled the character identity.
I can't help it. I totally stand all my Funko Pops. I have the Umbrella Academy one. I have a Basquiat one. So yeah, I love them. I can't help it.
Yeah, I don't have a ton, but I have a Swamp Thing Funko. Just to sort of ground it in, pop culture history is to just say a little bit about the character and her history in the Marvel universe, Marvel Comics universe. And what's funny is that can you guess what famous mainstream Marvel comic Agatha Harkness debuted in? It's not an occult property. It's one of the big ones. Like one of the main, say top 3 or 4 main Marvel comics.
The Avengers? That's my guess.
Nope. Close.
Okay, that's
close.
My guess.
She does wind up being in the Avengers, but that's not where she debuted. She actually debuted in the Fantastic Four.
Oh, all right.
She actually was one of those characters created by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby.
Wow.
October 69, Fantastic Four, number 94. And she, I guess, is the governess of little Franklin Richards, and it turns out that she's secretly a witch. But and she's her original incarnation. She's an old woman, and she's a good witch. In the comics originally, she's a good witch, and she helps the Fantastic Four fight off evil occult villains, including her own son, Nicholas Scratch, who has only been referenced in the show. Apparently, her son was the bad guy, and she was a member of the Daughters of Liberty, which was a little superheroine group. So yeah, she starts off as a good guy, and she helps the Fantastic Four.
I didn't know she went back that far. She's older than us, and we're old AF. So,
Yeah.
like, that's wild craziness.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the many instances of elderly characters who got way de-aged in their cinematic debuts, and then the comics wind up canonizing that, and now she's in the comics as a young hottie. But she's played by the inimitable Kathryn Hahn, Northwestern graduate. I think we were actually there maybe at the same time. She always looked familiar. I don't know that I knew her, but yeah, she was part of that whole Northwestern crew. Known for sitcoms and all kinds of. She was in Parks and Rec, along with Aubrey Plaza, who's in the show. We'll talk about Aubrey Plaza in a minute. Yeah, I mean, she's primarily a comic actress, but although she has done dramatic roles and quite well. So she was brought in through WandaVision. She has implanted herself as the nosy neighbor archetype. The Mrs. whatever
Gladys
in Bewitched.
Kravitz.
Gladys Kravitz, yeah, she's the Gladys Kravitz in Bewitched, and then all these other characters. And then, of course, as you watch the show, it turns out that she's actually not under the spell like the rest of the town is. She's using the spell to sort of get close to Wanda to find out what's going on, and to, of course, take her power, because that's what witches do, right? They want all the power for themselves, etc., etc. So yeah, I mean, and that pretty much sets up the show. When they get into the magical battle in the skies at the climax of WandaVision, and we find out that Agatha was a witch in Salem that I guess unintentionally killed her mother and her coven, because they tried to kill her, and in self-defense she sucks all the power from them. So we found out she's kind of a leech witch. Like, she just takes people's power. If they throw power at her, she can just suck it
Yeah,
all.
we've got this concept of the Salem 7, which I think is interesting, but she already broke the rules. I mean, I'm not trying to hate on Agatha, but like there's laws and rules and things like that. This is my Hierophant coming out, but there's things you can do and you can't do. And she had already messed that up. She'd already taken stuff she wasn't supposed to do. And her mother looked like she was sad about it, but there has to be consequences. That's how I saw it.
Well, and it's also important to note, this is comic book witchcraft that has nothing to do with real witchcraft, but it's basing itself on folklore, right? And it's basing itself on pop culture, and so it's drawing from all of these various tropes to create this character. And so, yeah, at the end of WandaVision, she's put back under Wanda's spell, and when the show begins, when Agatha All Along begins, she thinks that she's like this downbeat detective. And apparently, I saw someone show that there was actually like a almost shot by shot reproduction of the show Mayor of Easttown with Kate Winslet on Max, which I've never seen, but
I've seen it. Yeah, okay, I get that totally.
That it's. I mean, to me, it felt like one of those like like Insomnia, like one of those an American version of a like Scandinavian show or something like that. Like, it just had that kind of feel to it. And that then eventually she's broken out of that spell, and Yeah, and so there's this whole thing about gathering a coven, and she's got to find these different witches that are elemental, uh, you know, represent each of the elements, and
I love that.
so
I
yeah,
love this Covenstead rule, right? Like wherever you
right,
are, there's going to be witches within a 3 mile radius, which I
right,
thought about it this morning and I was like, I think honestly, anybody in a large city like you or me could spit and probably hit a witch.
right,
There's a hell of a lot more if you go to a 3 mile
yeah,
radius.
and and again, of course, witch in the comic book universe type of thing is that kind of Sabrina slash Samantha type thing where it's like they're a different race, they're immortal, et cetera, et cetera. So it's not just they make references to modern day Wicca, and they make references to actual practices here and there, but the characters themselves are these immortal types, right? So yeah, if
Yeah, but we've got
find
we've got everybody. We've got
right,
Patti Lupone, right? Like "Don't Cry for Me, Argentina." I love Patti Lupone. We've got the black one, we've got the Asian one, we've got like it is fully representative. I'm sorry, it is. It's like a
yeah,
multicultural
yeah,
thing.
yeah.
Agatha's the only white person in there.
Right. Well, yeah, you got Sashir Zamata as Jennifer Kale, Jen Kale, and I guess she was on Saturday Night Live at some point. I wasn't aware of her, a really big SNL person, but and that yeah, her character is clearly she's the I guess the water associated witch, and but she's clearly a scam artist, who's using magical, natural, all natural formulas that turn out to be, just crap. Um,
I
so
think she's interesting too as this kind of beacon of internet witchcraft, right? Like
right,
that's what I spoke about at the American Academy of Religion conference this year. This kind of like people who get popular or hundreds of thousands of followers online with very little, you know, practicality or safety to their magic. And I think it's interesting that she fits that niche.
yeah, I mean, she's probably the most TikTok witch of
Mm-hmm.
all of them. Um, and once I mean we're kind of jumping around here, but once they have their trials, it's always fun to see what what the writers think of that trope. And when it's her trial, when it's Jen's trial, they're all like live, laugh, love type of suburban, like, oh, we're gonna go on a retreat type of type of vibe
Yes.
where they suddenly are in all these very like the sweaters and the hairstyles and all that, and it's in the suburban house. I find that funny. um, so yeah, we also have Ali An as the, I believe she's the fire
She's the fire
representative.
witch. Yeah.
Yeah, as Alice Wu Gulliver. And Ali An, I recognized her from Hannibal. She had a small but crucial role
Oh,
as sort
that's
of like
right.
Hannibal. And and her character represents the kind of that the sort of the rock music, the rock occult thing. In the story, it's her mother has put out this famous song that was like like a '60s, like late '60s, early '70s song on vinyl that's about the Witch's Road, and we'll talk about the Witch's Road in a second because that's a whole thing.
I might
Uh,
sing. Morning,
yeah.
yo.
So yeah, so she's got a whole thing with when it's her trial, then everything is very over the top, '70s glam vibe in a recording studio.
I think it's cool that she's also the protection witch, like, so she used to be a cop. She's a security guard when they first meet her. So there's this way in which her magic is both for protection, but also her practical life is also for protection. You get the feeling that she could, totally kick somebody's ass.
Right. Yeah, that she's been protected by her mother by a protection spell that has kept her safe from this family curse, which is a sort of like this fire demon type of thing. But of course, as soon as as soon as that curse is taken care of, Although I'm kind of confident that we're going to see these characters again, even if they're killed off. But we'll see.
Yeah, we're not so sure what happens on the road stays on the road. I guess we'll find out eventually.
So the road is kind of like this underworld, right? It's they have to actually, when they do the spell and sing the song, they have to go down into the basement, which is the gateway to this underworld. So it kind of feels like, yeah, so they're walking along this road, and it's unclear what the road actually is. Like you get power at the end of it, or you get what you've been missing, or you get whatever. And so they're all there for their own particular reasons, and they're this reluctant coven. They know Agatha is not trustworthy and is a villain and all this kind of stuff, but they go along for their own reasons. So yeah, it's this the Witch's Road, and they had to sing a song to get it going.
Down, down, down the road.
As soon as I heard that, I was like, oh man, there are gonna be so many public rituals that are gonna be using this song, or even like I heard it. It's already I'm sure it's out on Spotify or something like that. It was used as intro music for a burlesque show that was about folk horror. So it's already out there. It's in the ether as a pop culture representation of witchcraft
It's
already.
a catchy little tune. It won't go out
Yeah.
of your head. Like
Oh
I've been
yeah.
learning French, so I watched it in French again last night. It sounds even better in French.
Oh
Sir,
my god.
sir, sir, la route. Like,
Oh, they actually have French singer. Oh wow.
oh
That's
yeah,
so
there's like
cool.
it's Disney, right? So there's like
Yeah,
five
yeah.
different translations you can watch it in simultaneously.
Oh,
So
that's wild. Yeah, because they have the different versions even on the show. There's like there's that kind of like ritualized version, but then there's also the 60s 70s glam rock version, which is also really freaking cool. Um, and
definitely. I
yeah,
mean, we
yeah.
haven't
So
talked about Patti Lupone. I was going to get
right.
my zills out because Patti Lupone's supposed to play the zills in the rock version of the song. But just the irony of having somebody that's like such a mega star as Patti Lupone in this thing, and they look at her and they're like, "You're not singing that right,"
Yeah,
It's
you're being
just
pitchy.
yes,
You're being pitchy. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think that was the joke, that they're, So yeah, and Patti Lupone has, she has a history of playing witches as well. I mean, she was the cut witch on Penny Dreadful, very, very, very different character, but still a witch, still somebody using magic, and it's kind of a dark character too. But yeah, so Patti freaking Lupone, you can't get much better than that. So what's funny about this, and this is again we're just kind of jumping around here, but what I find really interesting about this show and the way that they've approached it is again, it's the meta has meta, and so Patti Lupone associated with witchcraft to a certain degree, and then Aubrey Plaza has this also Parks and Rec, but also has a history of playing kind of witchy characters. But then that kind of became part of her persona. Like she would thank Satan at award shows, and and then she had that whole thing where she put out the witch as like the Christmas witch book that she co-wrote or whatever, and she was showing up in all the talk shows in in a witch outfit, in a witch hat, and saying she's a witch. So there's a lot of things that she did that were very, very much associated with witches. So we have, clearly there's this there this was all taken into account, and so I've been really loving all of the reels and stuff for like with the interviews and they did that version of Hot Ones where it's the host isn't there, but there's two of them, and they're like given challenges to like do the whole back and forth, and they talk about in one of those they talk about, oh yeah, so and so, I can't remember which one it was, but it was like someone's they're an expert on the tarot. So what kind of tarot, your goal is to do a tarot reading for Patti Lupone and to crack her up, make her laugh, and she doesn't succeed because Patti Lupone just keeps a straight face, and
Yeah, she's
although
a
she
professional. I
although
think we should do it.
although
I'm gonna put on a tinfoil hat and make you laugh. Like that's gonna be in our Patreon.
yeah. And then they talk about like how oh, who would be in your coven for real, and they're like, oh, there's all these questions about like who's the coven, and they talk about like, oh, we really think of this for real as a coven because we really bond, we really bonded on the on the set, and we're now all good friends. And so it's been this interesting thing to like to not that it's hasn't been done before, but the idea of the coven being the homosocial women's group to to support each other and promote women's empowerment and all that kind of stuff. I mean, even when I say empowerment, it sounds so. After all
Yeah,
that stuff
yeah.
in the 80s, it really just kind of that word just kind of doesn't have the
No,
same.
it doesn't sound right. It doesn't sound right. I mean,
Right.
I feel like repowerment, I think would be better, because it's a reclaiming, I think, in a way. But you're the performance studies person, but I love this idea of that bond that you form on stage or in a performance capacity with people is similar to the bond that you form with people in witchcraft, like you go through certain trials and it's intense and it's kind of like going down the road, right? Like you've got goals and things like that and impossible challenges to meet. And then hopefully it all turns out okay in the end. So I think that's just a fascinating comparison that I didn't even think about before.
Yeah, there's and what's how that plays into the script as well is that you want them to bond, the characters, but they keep stabbing each other in the back, or at least Agatha
Sure.
keeps stabbing them in the back. And there are points when especially when the teen is like, oh, this is great, you're all getting along, we're all having this great time, and it, I'm super curious about what's going on with Patti Lupone's character, because there's one of the things where she just blurts out things that clearly aren't happening now, but may have happened in the past or may happen in the future, including a card reading. So there's this card reading that's slowly being built throughout the show, and I think one of them's like Three of Swords at the beginning, uh, and then Three of Pentacles, and then there was and then the Tower reversed, and it's like, what is this reading build up? I hope they do something cool with that when it builds up to that. You'll find out by the time this is aired if you're watching it.
If you're all caught up. No, I think it's interesting. And I love this beginning as the Three of Pentacles, this way in which, the pet, the boy, the teen, whatever we want to call him, if you haven't seen what his real name is, but there's a way in which that Three of Coins is that apprenticeship stage, right? Like he's gathering all this knowledge. And really, those first few episodes are the teen gathering all this knowledge and trying to learn what he can from the older witches and from books and the internet and all of that to sort of hone his craft. And then we find out that he really has all of this power.
Yeah, and it's again, comic book universe there. I don't think they're going to use his character's superhero name. It would be funny if they did, because the superhero name is Wiccan. Just, and it's funny because I've been following a lot, because that was the thing about Wiccan, which is really, I think, fascinating with all of this, is that when the character was created, not the imaginary son of Wanda, but when he becomes a teen Avenger, it wasn't that long ago. I want to say it was like 2005, Young Avengers, and even then, I mean, that's like what, it's like 20 years ago. They were just starting to bring in openly gay characters, and having a lot of backlash about why do you got to make, and their kids, why do you got to make them gay and all this kind of stuff. And so yeah, for those of you who watch the show who don't know the comics, Wiccan, Billy Kaplan, is canonically gay, and dates Hulkling, who looks like a Hulk but he's really a Skrull. It's a whole other thing. But yeah, so I've been following it along in the comics. I'm still about 10 years behind, but the funny thing is that I think by a certain point they start to question the use of the word Wiccan as his superhero name. Like, what's that about? Like, why would you call yourself that? So they're sort of critiquing that. I think by the time they get to like 2016 or so. Um, so yeah, he's in the comics. He has magical powers. But we kind of want to see it through his eyes too in the show. So again, we don't know what's going to happen, but yeah, there is that notion that they're going to go down the road and everything. Now, the road itself, as we said, it's kind of presented as this underworld thing, but very clearly it's meant to reference the Yellow Brick Road and Wizard of
Sure.
Oz. There's a Wizard of Oz reference in almost every episode. And some of it is just like Aubrey Plaza messing about. It's like she starts doing the Dorothy skip along the
Yes.
road, and then when they're on the broomsticks, she starts doing the Margaret Hamilton cackle. You know,
Yep.
so it's very much about like what. And when you think about the road in terms of, I mean, we did our Wizard of Oz episode, and I'm sure there's some kind of like, I don't know, some sort of economic metaphor about what the road means on in the books, but in the pop culture aspect of it, the road, there's a lot of different things. Talking to you, I think of course, crossroads and all of that stuff, but also just that the underworld road is definitely a thing in Celtic folklore, especially like the whole high road low road thing. You take the high road, I take the low
Yeah,
road.
I'll take the low road. Yeah, one of them's in the afterlife or the world of the invisibles or whatever you want to
Right.
call it, right? And you're right, the crossroads. There's just cross references everywhere. I mean, Patti Lupone, when she's doing the palm reading, talks about that you can't see it, but I've got the psychic cross, and he has
Yeah,
the
yeah.
psychic cross on his hand. So there's all this,
Right.
it could go one way or another, right? And there's I thought it was interesting when we look at the road too. There's literally like looks like you could go a bunch of different ways. They seem to know which way they're going and where they're going, but there does also stick to the road, beware the moors. There does seem to be other ways to go, maybe. And I think that that's very interesting that they included that as well, because that's a thing, right? Like you got to stay on the road.
Yeah, yeah. That's a fairy story thing. Like,
Mm-hmm.
don't get off the path, because then you'll never find it again. So yeah, there's a lot of folklore going on that. I mean, yeah, the meta qualities are just off the charts. And you look at the credits, the closing sequence, and there's you got Wizard of Oz, you got Snow White, you've got The Simpsons, you've got you got Fruza Balk from the Craft right
Yeah, we've
there.
got craft up in
Um,
there. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, and I looked up this other one that's I was like, some of these witches look like they look like they're actual witches. There was one that's like the Witch of Rochester from in Indiana in 1938, an actual woman who was uh, charged with witchcraft in Indiana in 1938. Um, she
That's
was
why.
basically, she was exiled. She was asked to leave the town, so I guess that was the only consequence. Um, but yeah, she was accused of performing hexes on neighbors, using vinegar and cat hair, causing property damage, causing, the old
My kind of
classics, right?
broad. There we go.
Right? Yeah. So yeah, there's that. Yeah, so there's all kinds of pop culture and folklore references just in that credit sequence alone.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. I wanted to talk about the sequence where they're talking about like what makes you a witch, and Aubrey Plaza. This is my notes for this episode. I'm covered in nipples. I love this thing about like, you know, my sister actually has a vestigial nipple. There's, that's a witch thing, right? Like you've got red hair, you've had a call, you've got extra digits, you've got an extra nipple, all of those things. I did a post on it on my blog about what makes you a witch. And I think this is something that it's folklore, right? But I think this is something that people are really coming back to. They want to have these ancient marks of witchcraft somewhere on them. So like we're in the secret society, secret society. So we can identify each other instantly. So I just think that's hilarious that they bring in all of these things.
Yeah, there's just so much, and I think we're really what it is it's an homage to that witch figure in our history, in our and specifically our pop culture history. So, and I feel like it's this nexus point, not to use an MCU reference, because they always talk about the nexus, right? And it's but it is it's this nexus of all this stuff like coming together at peak witchery, to create narrative and how we write stories and how we create identity and present ourselves and everything.
Yeah, I think it's interesting too how it sort of draws in this concept of othering, right? If we look at Agatha and all the characters, they're all othered in some way. You've got the gay teen, which makes him othered. You've got these minorities and they're all sort of isolated somehow. Even the witch talk, woman, it still seems isolated and removed. She doesn't have a coven. None of them really have a coven without each other. So it's this kind of, island of misfit toys, as they used to say, coming together to make something stronger, a whole out of the parts. And I think that's something that we can all relate to as well. That's something
Right.
that, so witchcraft,
Yeah.
it might be mainstream now, but it wasn't always, and a lot of those people came to it because they did want an equalizer. They did want empowerment or repowerment or however you want to call it. So I think it picks up on that. And that's one of the reasons it's so popular.
Yeah, and Jen's character is in the story. It says she's bound. Like there's somebody who has done witchcraft against her to take away her power. So you kind of think that all of her scam artist stuff is out of desperation.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
and this is how she can still survive and make money. And yeah, because she's been literally marginalized. So yeah, there's a lot going on there, and that's why I'm like, I'm really hoping that they stick the landing, because I part of me wants to see them come together, and there are even those moments where you begin to see that um, Agatha even cares for the teen,
Yes.
um, but and you want her to be redeemed as all anti-heroes, anti-heroines are supposed to be, but but yeah, it is interesting that Agatha is kind of a heroine in the comics, and in the MCU they decide, okay, we're gonna go full on into the evil witch stereotype, um, but still make it, as you said, nuanced, but but there's no question she's you know evil. But some of it is that, yeah, did she intend to do this, or is this just the consequences of her bad choices, all of that. So again, there's lots of things you could talk about in terms of like witchcraft and morality, and all of those tropes that we often talk about, as you said, when it comes to witchcraft in television shows and movies and things like that. So that's it for us this time. Thanks for joining us. We are we are so happy to be back. Had our nice hiatus and rest, and we are back ready to dive into the world of pop culture that is ever expanding in our world. And even though we don't have such thing as Bruhapedia, like the teen has when he's researching Agatha, there are plenty of really great online stuff, online resources, and things happening. And of course, one of those is our Patreon site, where we put our little extras, our deleted scenes. Usually, if you're just joining us, this first time you're seeing us, oftentimes we do have a guest on to talk about all these fun things with us. For our first time back, we decided to just do it by ourselves, and we could two of us could talk for hours about this stuff. It's kind of what we do.
I just want to thank everybody again for watching us go on and on. I know we know what we're talking about, but I still appreciate it that everybody's out there and we're getting such good feedback. We'd also love, if there's anything you really want us to do, let us know. Let us know. We're always open to ideas. I have my favorites and Jason has his favorites, but I want to hear about your favorites as well. And hopefully we can get it recorded for you and do some extra great stuff on the Patreon. So check it out.
We will see you next time at the Pop Culture Show. Thanks for joining us, and thanks for coming on back and stick with us. And we're going to have some fun stuff.
We'll see you down the road.
Down the witch. I don't know the whole thing, but yeah.